So the easiest way to solve a rational equation is probably what you remember from Algebra 1, which is just basically cross-multiplying both sides. So what you do is you take one denominator, multiply it by the numerator at the other side, and vice versa, and solve it out. Okay, so that's great if we have a single fraction equal to a single fraction. Okay, but that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes we're going to be adding and subtracting things on one side, and getting those together to get one fraction isn't always going to be the easiest. So there is another way to solve stuff like this. And basically what we want to do is multiply everything by the least common denominator. And what that does is really get rid of our fractions altogether. Okay, so the first thing we want to do when we're dealing with that is to factor all our denominators so we can find what our least common denominator is. So we factor this out. This is x plus 1, x minus 1. And then we multiply both sides by the least common denominator. The least common denominator in this case is x plus 1 times x minus 1. Okay, so multiply everything by this. When we distribute this into this first term, the x plus 1's cancel, and we're just left with 3 times x minus 1. Over here, everything cancels because x plus 1, x minus 1 is the same thing as x squared minus 1. So we end up with this is equal to 1. And now we have an equation without any denominator to solve. So this is just 3x minus 3 is equal to 1. Solving this out, add 3. 3x is equal to 4. Divide by 3, x is equal to 4/3. Okay. The one thing we do have to be careful with when solving rational equations is our domain issues. Okay? And by domain issues, those are the values of x that we can put in. So you always want to look at your beginning statement and see what restrictions you have on x. So here I can't have x is equal to 1 or negative 1 because then I'd be dividing by 0 and I can't do that. So whenever you get your answer, you always want to make sure that it's in the domain of the statement you started with. Here x is 4/3. That's not a problem because we said the only issues we had were 1 and negative 1. Okay? So solving a rational equation by multiplying by the least common denominator. It's really cool. Everything cancels out in the denominator, and we're able to solve a equation. In this case, it's a linear equation. Sometimes we'll end up with quadratics, but either way, we're going to end up with something we know how to solve.